Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
But in this case, the theory that the counterintelligence investigation of those around the president is flawed from its inception is in itself flawed because the FISA application didn't take place until months after the investigation was opened, correct?
I don't understand your question.
Well, some argue that we should ignore Mueller has to say. We should ignore everything the Russians did because they have problems with aspects of the FISA application. But the FISA application was opened months after the investigation began, correct?
Correct.
It didn't initiate the investigation, correct?
Also correct.
In fact, Carter Page was not even with the Trump campaign anymore at the time the application was filed. Isn't that correct?
I don't think that's relevant, but it is, as I understand, they had formally separated. I assume you know that when you get up on somebody's phones and stuff, you can go backwards as well as...
It is certainly relevant, is not Mr. McCarthy, if you're making an accusation of spying on the Trump campaign, that a FISA application, in fact, of Carter Page didn't begin until Carter Page was no longer with that campaign. Isn't that accurate?
No, I think that if you're getting access to somebody's communications under circumstances where that access will afford you the opportunity to go backwards so that you can read their communications while they're in the campaign.
And do you know that to be a fact, Mr. McCarthy, or are you speculating about that?
I know it to be a fact that when you get authorization, you get to go backwards.
Do you know whether that's the case here, or are you speculating about that?
I don't have any direct knowledge of the investigation. You're quite correct. I'm speculating from the outside.
You think the Justice Department officials that signed off on the application were acting in bad faith?
No, I think they made a mistake.
Do you think Mr. Rosenstein, who signed off on one of the applications, was acting in bad faith?
I think he made a mistake.
Do you think the judges who signed off, I believe there were 3 or 4 judges who signed off on the applications, were they acting in bad faith?
I don't think anyone was acting in bad faith on the FISA court.
So all of them just made mistakes?
Yes, that's right. That happens.
And this dossier, how does Mr. Mueller rely on the Steele dossier in his report?
It's 200 pages. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that he relied on it for in terms of any kind of important conclusion.
Short answer is he does not. Correct?
I don't think so. I just don't want to. I don't want to give you a sloppy answer off the top of my head.
Mr. McCarthy, when did you learn that there was a counterintelligence investigation of the Trump campaign?
I don't know. I'd have to. I learned as a member of the public. I don't have any inside personal information, so I would have to go back over things that I had written and read over time to try to pin it down.
And when did the public learn of the existence of the counterintelligence investigation of the Trump campaign?
I know Director Comey testified here or before this committee on March 20th of 2017. It seemed to me at that point in time that what he was directing his remarks to, at least in part, was evident from the intelligence community assessment that came out in January. So it seemed clear to me, reading the public version of the intelligence community assessment, that the intelligence community had not stopped investigating Russia's interference in the election.
You're correct, Mr. McCarthy. The first public disclosure of the counterintelligence investigation of the Trump campaign took place in Mr. Comey's open testimony in this committee of March of 2017.
Right.
That would have been months after the presidential.
Yes.
If the personal animus reflected in the private emails between Mr. Strzok and Ms. Page reflected official actions to scuttle the Trump campaign, wouldn't the Trump investigation have been disclosed before the election, not after?
I don't know that the bias that you detect from the emails would have had anything to do with when the investigation. The emails are.
If FBI agents were determined to act unprofessionally and scuttle the Trump campaign, would they not have disclosed the fact that they were investigating the campaign of a presidential candidate for links with a foreign adversary?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not trying to be difficult. I never have said that they were trying to scuttle the Trump campaign. I don't know that there's evidence that they were trying to scuttle the Trump campaign, so I don't want to be in a position of agreeing that is my position, because it's not.
The FBI was very open, however, the investigation of one of the candidates, Secretary Clinton, correct?
Yeah, well, that was it was a criminal investigation that couldn't help but be public because of the way it was referred to the FBI. And the other investigation's a counterintelligence investigation, which is classified, and they're not allowed to talk about. They're really two different things.
Well, they're not really supposed to talk about a pending criminal investigation either, are they?
No, you're right. If there's no charges, the government should not speak until the government speaks in court. You're not supposed to talk about investigations until you formally charge someone, and then they have the full array of constitutional protections that they get to defend themselves.
So in terms of the public actions taken by the Bureau during the presidential campaign, they had the effect of discussing the investigation involving Hillary Clinton, but not Donald Trump, correct?
No, I wouldn't go that far, because beginning in, I think it's September, you start to get these public reports that Steele and Fusion GPS are putting out, and the Isikoff article I'm thinking of in particular, which I think is like September 23rd, refers not only to information from law enforcement people and counterintelligence people, but I think it quotes a letter. I don't know if it quotes it as a letter, but it quotes remarks from then Senator Reid with respect to the investigation and pushing the FBI to get on with an investigation.
Mr. McCarthy, there's no public acknowledgement by the FBI of any investigation of Donald Trump or his campaign prior to the election. Isn't that true?
You mean a formal, as opposed to leaked information, a formal public announcement that there was an investigation? No.
Correct.
It's not.
It is Thursday, the 13th of June of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Oh, yes, indeed. Speaking of spice, at the top there, Rudy Giuliani-buddy Andrew McCarthy. I don't think you really wanted to implicate anybody. He talks a big pro-Trump game there on Fox News. And it looks to me like Adam Schiff has watched his, presentations on Fox a couple of times, at least a couple of times. Because he sure didn't want to admit anything he says on Fox News on a regular basis. Under oath? And the withering questions by Adam Schiff. I like Schiff's quiet style. It's very effective. You can tell he was a prosecutor too. Yeah. Crooks really don't like prosecutors. which is, Trump admitted that with George yesterday when he said, I've been in business for all my life, decades, and I've never called the FBI when a crime was committed. I mean, no one I know would. Who does that? I'll tell you who does. Law-abiding citizens. I just wish that the media would interject every now and then that when Hillary was hacked, she turned it over to the FBI. When the DNC was hacked, they turned it over to the FBI. Any foreign influence that they had, whether good or ill, you're supposed to turn it over to the FBI. Now, Mitch McConnell did allow legislation that allows funding for civics education so that kids, I don't know, maybe 20, 30, 40 years from now might know how to bring our democracy back. I hope. But I also hope that we don't lose it enough that we need that. It's going to take a while. Because apparently there's not enough people who know enough about civics to save the great experiment. I would propose that this is all part of the great experiment. These tests. Throw in a caustic, volatile mixture and see what happens. Can democracy write that? Can its base counteract that acid? That's what democracy is supposed to do. Calm the volatile mess enough so that people can make proper decisions, like, filling potholes in the street. Simple things like that. Sort of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You fill the potholes in the street. Next thing you know, you're making sure bridges don't collapse in the middle of driving over them. That's what democracy is supposed to do. Otherwise, people are so at odds with each other by manufactured intent. Because if people are comfortable and happy, they might be voting for the people that make them comfortable and happy. And there's a certain element, a certain party that only thrives upon constant whining about victimhood and you're taking stuff from me. Oh, I'm so tired of it. But we go on because, it was told to me here in town that, I don't want to have to think about this. I came here to live in my rose-colored glasses. Yeah, talk about irresponsibility. Give me an effing break. Your responsibility as an American quits because you're, quote, retired. Jesus. Of course, on the other hand, there's some that are, I wish that they would put on some rose-colored glasses and maybe ratchet it down a little bit. Quiet down. There are some people that are just so caustic. They have to make some sort of bad comment about everybody every time. Well, not everybody. There's a certain honor among thieves, so to speak, or a professional consideration, like sharks and lawyers, professional considerations among their peers. But anybody else outside the, quote, group is a target for ridicule and caustic name-calling and little belittlings. It just small-minded, provincial, small town. Except the world in inverse qualities is both much smaller and also much larger. Our small town idea is really, really more expansive now because of modern times. And those modern times also mean that the world is much smaller. Except when it comes to bugs like bacteria and viruses killing you. Jeez. Got Jessica Biel joining JFK Jr. for an anti-vax move in California. Oh, we don't want to be put on some registry. Well, you're not getting put on a registry, but you know what? I don't want the plague, especially in these perilous political times. It would make for, I don't know, insult upon insult, shall we say. Speaking of insults, what's on the rest of the menu? Well, Matt Gaetz demanded that Congress get back to legislating after voting no on everything. Yeah, insult on insult. Speaking of which, NASA was forced to correct Trump's embarrassing comment by announcing that the moon and Mars are not, in fact, the same thing. I don't know. Not only civics, but we're going to have to teach science, basic science. And FEMA admits it's short a few thousand employees as hurricane season begins. Feature, not a bug, but that's just me. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where Trump says he may move thousands of troops from Germany to Poland because he really likes autocratic, press-killing, holocaust-denying Polish President Andrzej Duda and his hot Aryan wife. And if the U.S. women's national team's 13-0 soccer victory over Thailand made you uneasy, then good. That's the point. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon site. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, your generosity keeps Resistance Radio resisting, as we have been resisting constantly 24/7, 365 for the last 8 years. We're celebrating our 8th anniversary this year. Wow. So machinery needs to be purchased, newish, never new. And the bills continue to be paid so that we can slide just under the radar. When you pay your bills, you can slip under the radar and you keep resisting. And thank you so much for your generosity. We really would be unable to do this without you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. You could just type in at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. And are we glad that he does? Now, I take care of at Justice Putnam. As I like to say, who would? And who would I let do it, huh? Okay, all kidding aside. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime and get that linked up on social media. A reminder, a very important and integral part to this multimedia operation. You might even say that the show notes and links diary is the overhead projector of this whole operation. Follow the show on Twitter at CookbookWest and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, not SoundCloud because you only have so much room. It's crazy. So I'm sorry, not SoundCloud, but really everywhere else podcasts can be found. Dan Desai Martin of ShareBlue Media brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, by the way. We will not give short shrift to grits. They will always be prominently displayed because what could be more American and humane to our fellow man and women, by the way. On Wednesday, that would have been yesterday, for those of you listening to the podcast. What was yesterday? It was yesterday, Wednesday. Matt Gaetz, Repug of Florida, took a break from defending Trump's crimes to whine on Facebook about the supposed lack of legislation moving through the House of Reps. Yeah, there's been, 42 bills passed and have just died in the Grim Reaper's Senate. Yeah. Well, of course, we're not talking about really legislating now, are we, Matt? We're talking about you whining because you're a brown shirt defender of Donnie Trump. Well, he seems to be complaining about some House committees fulfilling their constitutional duty to oversee the executive branch, a branch currently headed up by a man swimming in corruption, let alone a lot of other crimes. While some committees are looking into Trump's crimes and malfeasance, the House has spent the past 5.5 months passing a slew of high-profile bills. And the new Democratic majority ended the Trump-led government shutdown. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi led the House to pass major legislation like the Voting Rights Act, gun safety, immigration, pay equity for women, prohibiting anti-LGBTQ discrimination, protecting people with pre-existing health conditions, lowering prescription drug prices, and reducing violence against women. Well, those are all liberal concerns. Only liberals are concerned about that. Real people want to be able to beat the hell out of LGBTQ people. They want to discriminate against them. Protecting people with pre-existing health conditions, that's other people. Those are the people like that person over there, not me. Look, lowering prescription drug prices. Well, that seems like a pretty good idea that everybody could get on board with, except for the people making a bunch of money off of, higher drug prescription prices. And Gaetz is the champion of those people. He claims he wants to get back to legislating, but he voted against every single one of those measures. Well, of course, they're liberal concerns. That's not real legislating. Real legislating is being able to lock up more people of brown and black hue in icebox baby gulags. That's the legislation that he wants because that's the legislation that Trump and his administration wants. One of the few pieces of legislation Gaetz has introduced was an unserious attempt to appease Trump. Gaetz introduced a resolution to strip Adam Schiff of his security clearance and named it the Pencil Resolution, after one of Trump's asinine nicknames for Schiff, who Trump once called a little pencil neck. Look, Donald Trump, I knew Freddie Blassie. I was friends with Freddie Blassie. And you, Mr. Trump, are no Freddie Blassie. Cy Martin of Share Blue Media again brings us this offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. NASA Administrator Jan Bridenstine, or was it Steen, was forced to clean up the mess Trump made with his angry tweet that both criticized NASA's goal to send people back to the moon and said the moon was a part of Mars. For all the money we are spending, NASA should not be talking about going to the moon. We did that 50 years ago. They should be focused on the much bigger things we're doing, including Mars, of which the moon is a part. Defense and science. First, some basic facts. The moon is not a part of Mars, though you might say the Earth is a part of the moon, or the moon is a part of the Earth. You could. The arguments have been made for that. But the moon is a rocky entity that revolves around Earth every 28 days. Mars, on the other hand, is a planet that has two moons of its own, Phobos and Deimos. As for NASA policy, Bridenstine, or is it Steen, said Trump's comments were all a big misunderstanding. Some people have tried to read more into this than there is, he told a crowd at NASA's Glenn Research Center. But there's the thing. We're going to Mars. The moon is a waypoint. Oh. Bridenstine, or is it Steen, said Trump's tweet resulted from a business news program that interviewed a NASA official about the need to go to the moon. What channel would that business have been on? The mind reels trying to figure out which one, because it's always just one. Trump's admonition that NASA should forget about going to the moon contradicted earlier statements from the Trump administration, sort of like when Mike Pence stood in front of everybody. During a 2017 White House event, Trump bragged about sending Americans to the moon, but he forgot about that. Saying a directive he signed at the event marks an important step in returning American astronauts to the moon for the first time since 1972. That's what he signed. Before eventually going to Mars. He signed that. Now, of course, reporting the actual words that he signed his name to is fake news. You know that. And a lot of people believe it, too. March of this year, Vice President Mike Pence made a major announcement that NASA would send people back to the moon by 2024. The first woman and next man on the moon will both be American astronauts, launched from rockets from American soil, Pence said at the time. Even Trump's most recent budget included funding to send people back to the moon. Well, Trump seemed to ignore all those promises and goals when he chastised NASA for talking about going to the moon. Of course, this is not the first time Trump needed to be corrected about something. Earlier this month, the Defense Department corrected Trump's lies about prescription medication used by American troops, including transgender troops. In April, the military was forced to correct Trump on a lie about Mexican soldiers drawing their guns on U.S. National Guard troops. And when the Notre Dame Cathedral caught fire earlier in April, French officials corrected Trump's unsolicited advice about how to fight the fire, noting Trump's plan would have caused the entire structure to collapse. Now, NASA joins the long list of agencies forced to clean up after a bungling Trump spouted off about things he knows little about. Of Think Progress brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. FEMA said that the Disaster Aid and Recovery Agency is still significantly understaffed nearly 2 years after recovery efforts during the devastating 2017 hurricane season were hindered by a lack of staffing, and in this reporter's opinion, it's even worse now. In a hearing on June 12th, acting FEMA administrator because Trump likes him acting that way. He thinks there's no oversight. Looks to me like he's testifying in front of a House committee on Homeland Security that the agency is prepared and ready to tackle any potential disasters in coming months. But Gaynor's exchange grew heated as Chairman Benny Thompson pressed the FEMA head about staffing levels. Are you fully staffed? Thompson asked repeatedly. Ultimately, Gaynor asserted that the agency's full-time staffing quota has been met, but that the agency is significantly understaffed with regards to part-time employees who are critical to addressing disasters and wide-scale crises. It has been a struggle for FEMA to make sure we have enough disaster responders, Gaynor said, acknowledging that we're probably short a few thousand employees. That acknowledgement comes with Atlantic hurricane season underway as of this month. Wildfires are once again surging in the western U.S. Oh, please don't come here again. It was so bad. The smoke was bad. Back to the article. Meanwhile, extreme flooding across the Midwest and parts of the South is imperiling local communities and economies. Don't worry. Donnie says it's just weather, and it will change. All right. Let's get on to our break, and when we come back from that break, you know we're going to go through weather from around the world, and you know we're going to finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, not your father's old McDonald. Since at least the Industrial Revolution, social observers have used the term alienation to describe the roots of humankind's problems. One area in which that alienation has been acute has been man's divorce from the natural world's mechanisms for maintaining life, nowhere better exemplified than in food production. Enter the new movie Biggest Little Farm, produced by and starring the well-connected nature photographer John Chester and his wife over 10 years. It documents their journey from their cramped Santa Monica apartment to being successful organic farmers. With their sustainability guru Alan, they take a 240-acre parcel, destroyed by industrial monocropping, and turn it, after well-documented reversals, into a model of diversified farming. We meet Emma the pig and a cast of thousands, mostly four-legged, as the Chesters and their crew use what's known as biomimicry to achieve balance between ducks and snails, chickens and coyotes, etc. And it's all beautifully done. But all is not as it seems. It's obvious that mountains of cash are being expended. There's an early reference to blowing holes in their budget, explained only by the fact that there are, quote, investors. But wise ones apparently, as eggs from Apricot Lane Farms, the name of the project now, are coveted by Hollywood food elites to the tune of $15 a dozen. Emma the Pig now has a kids' book series, and then there are the movie receipts. What's missing is a plan for scalability and its inevitable associated politics. The electric vehicle of 50 years hence won't be a hand-built Tesla, and agriculture then won't look like the Biggest Little Farm. But if you're an urban-dwelling person who eats, this is the model and the movie one you and your kids should see. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Steve Mirsky. So you buy something made of plastic and it's labeled biodegradable. You can rest easy knowing that after you throw it out, it will harmlessly break down. Well, not so fast.
When we look at biodegradability as it pertains to landfills, biodegradability is not a desirable attribute for a material. And the reason for this is that when we design for biodegradability, we're typically designing for rapid biodegradability. And yet, landfills do not begin to collect the gas that's produced typically for 2 years. So much of the gas, the methane from biodegradability, is released to the environment before gas collection systems are installed.
Morton Barlaws. He heads the Department of Civil, Construction, and Environmental Engineering at North Carolina State University, and he spoke June 6th on Capitol Hill at the third Science Meets Congress event, co-hosted by Scientific American and California Congressman Jerry McNerney. The theme of this session, Solving the Plastic Waste Problem.
Now, I just answered the question from a landfill perspective. If I were to switch hats and say, well, is it desirable from a litter perspective? Sure. If it actually biodegrades and is converted to gas, then the litter would disappear, and that's desirable. But let's make sure it's really biodegrading and not just degrading into small pieces that nobody can see. That's degradability. It's not biodegradability.
Also on the panel, Cara Lavender Law, research professor at the Sea Education Association in Woods Hole. She studies plastic debris in the ocean. What about biodegradability there?
I do not think that it is possible to design a material that will do that in the open environment, and certainly not in the ocean. My understanding is that a lot of the standards around classifying a material as biodegradable are done under temperatures of 30 degrees Celsius. And for reference, the average temperature of the surface ocean spans 0 degrees Celsius to 25 degrees Celsius with an average temperature of 4 degrees Celsius. So even if you had a magical material that satisfied all the other environmental criteria, it's likely that that kind of breakdown would occur on such slow timescales that waste would build up and probably cause environmental harm. We shouldn't think of the ocean as or the environment as a magical disposal of our waste.
More of the session and a discussion of some solutions will air on an upcoming episode of the long-form Scientific American podcast, Science Talk. And the next 60-second Science podcast will look at a new study on just how many tiny pieces of plastic you're ingesting every day. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Steve Mirsky.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Pools, water parks, and other recreational water venues are popular places to relax and stay cool, but they can be sources of serious illness. Since 2000, nearly 500 outbreaks have been reported at recreational water venues in the U.S., resulting in over 27,000 illnesses and 8 deaths. Most were caused by parasites, bacteria, viruses, or certain chemicals in the water. Parents with young children who have diarrhea should not allow their children to swim or play in the water. In addition, bathers should check the inspection scores of pools and water parks and can conduct mini inspections using test strips before getting in the water. A few simple precautions can allow you to share the fun, not the germs. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
But Mom!
Don't but Mom me. You heard what the doctor said.
I'm fine. I just got my bell rung. It's not like I blacked out.
You've had headaches, dizzy spells, and you're just not yourself. That's not feeling fine.
Come on, I can't miss the game.
It's still serious, even if you didn't black out. It's better to miss one game than the whole season.
All concussions are serious. Know the warning signs and never let your child return to play before a healthcare professional says it's okay. A message from CDC.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com. All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Quote, the Russian government interfered in the 2016 presidential election in sweeping and systematic fashion. Who said that?
Listen up. This matters. I'm Louis Black, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
That would be the same person who said that Russia interfered by carrying out, quote, a social media campaign that favored presidential candidate Donald J. Trump and disparaged presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, and by utilizing, quote, a Russian intelligence service that conducted computer intrusion operations against entities, employees, and volunteers working on the Clinton campaign, and then released stolen documents, end quote. The same person who said that the Russian entity called IRA, the Internet Research Agency, conducted, quote, a social media campaign designed to provoke and amplify political and social discord in the United States. And then went on to say, in total, that Russian agency, quote, controlled accounts that made over 80,000 posts, which may have reached an estimated 126 million people, according to Facebook. The person who said all this is the special counsel Robert Mueller. So when we think about what is necessary to protect American democracy in 2020 and beyond, we thought it useful to hear what the special counsel actually found.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union, because freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1991. That was the day that a San Francisco man, Jeffrey Collins, received $5.3 million for wrongful termination from Shell Oil. The judge ruled the company had fired Jeffrey because they found out he was gay. Jeffrey had been a second-generation Shell employee. His dad worked for the company for 37 years before retiring. Jeffrey worked for their Triton Biosciences division. He oversaw a team working on developing drugs for cancer, AIDS, and other diseases. For 19 years, he had received positive reviews and 9 promotions. He rose to become the second highest executive for Triton. All of that changed when management found an invitation to a party for gay men that Jeffrey planned to attend. And for that, they fired him. The company claimed they made this decision after reevaluating his performance. They stated that they felt Jeffrey could not be effective as a leader once his team learned of his off-the-job activities. After his firing, Jeffrey could not find a similar job. Despite all of this, he was willing to settle out of court for far less money. But Shell decided to fight the wrongful termination charges. Cases such as the one brought by Jeffrey helped to bring to light the employment discrimination faced by many in the LGBT community. Since his case, California, along with 28 other states and the District of Columbia, have passed laws prohibiting firings based on sexual orientation. 32 states have laws against discrimination based on gender identity. 434 of the Fortune 500 companies have implemented similar policies. Yet, despite these gains, protecting and improving LGBT rights on the job remains an important fight for today's labor movement. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Shocking no one, but surprising us nonetheless, Donald Trump said in an interview that aired Wednesday that he might take help from a foreign government offering information on a 2020 opponent. Trump made the comment to ABC's George Stephanopoulos while discussing why his son, Donald Trump Jr., didn't go to the FBI after he spoke with a Russian lawyer at Trump Tower during the 2016 presidential election. Here's how it unfolded.
And then the report comes out, and they didn't even say, they hardly even talked about it.
Should he have gone to the FBI when he got that email?
Okay, let's put yourself in a position. You're a congressman. Somebody comes up and says, hey, I have information on your opponent. Do you call the FBI? I don't think.
Coming from
I'll tell you what,
you do.
I've seen a lot of things over my life. I don't think in my whole life I've ever called the FBI. In my whole life. You don't call the FBI. You throw somebody out of your office. You do whatever you do.
Al Gore got a stolen briefing book. He called the FBI.
Well, that's different. A stolen briefing book. This isn't a stolen. This is somebody that said, we have information on your opponent. Oh, let me call the FBI. Give me a break. Life doesn't work that way.
The FBI director says that's what should happen.
The FBI director is wrong.
Your campaign this time around, if foreigners, if Russia, if China, if someone else offers you information on an opponent, should they accept it or should they call the FBI?
I think maybe you do both. I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening. If somebody called from a country, Norway, we have information on your opponent. Oh, I think I'd want to hear it.
You want that kind of interference in our elections?
It's not an interference. They have information. I think I'd take it. If I thought there was something wrong, I'd go maybe to the FBI if I thought there was something wrong. But when somebody comes up with Oppo research, right? They come up with Oppo research. Oh, let's call the FBI. The FBI doesn't have enough agents to take care of it. But you go and talk honestly to congressmen. They all do it. They always have. And that's the way it is. It's called Oppo research.
As of press time Thursday morning, Republicans have been silent on Trump's latest treasonous statement. Donald Trump Jr. told Senate investigators on Wednesday that he did not inform his father at the time about a June 2016 meeting with a Russian lawyer promising, quote, dirt on Hillary Clinton, and that he was not kept abreast of negotiations over a proposed real estate project in Moscow. This, according to a person familiar with his testimony. The battle of the branches of government raged on Wednesday over the administration's controversial decision to add a question about citizenship to the 2020 census. The Supreme Court should announce its decision before the end of the month. But in the meantime, neither side has been patiently waiting for it. First, Donald Trump asserted executive privilege to block Congress's access to documents about how the citizenship question was added to the 2020 census. Then the House Oversight and Reform Committee voted to hold Attorney General William Barr and Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross in contempt of Congress for defying the panel's subpoenas for information about that decision. Ross had told Congress that the question was intended to help enforce the Voting Rights Act, which is utter nonsense. Hope Hicks, a former longtime confidant of Donald Trump's, will testify behind closed doors before the House Judiciary Committee. This according to Chairman Jerry Nadler, with a transcript of her testimony to be released shortly thereafter. Hicks, who served as a top aide to Trump's presidential campaign and in the White House, will answer lawmakers' questions next Wednesday. There's some breaking news Thursday morning. The House Intelligence Committee has issued subpoenas for National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and former Deputy Trump campaign chairman Rick Gaetz, two of former special counsel Robert Mueller's most important cooperators. Committee Chairman Adam Schiff said the two men, quote, refused to fully cooperate with Congress. Senator Bernie Sanders delivered a major address about the historic role of democratic socialism in America's battles to defeat oligarchy and right-wing nationalism. Just as Franklin Roosevelt's democratic socialist program helped defeat rising authoritarianism in the aftermath of the Great Depression, Sanders called on America to reject Donald Trump's xenophobic and authoritarian policies. He instead offered his vision to complete the unfinished business of the New Deal and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. by guaranteeing basic economic rights for all people.
Many in the establishment would like the American people to submit to the tyranny of oligarchs, multinational corporations, Wall Street banks, and billionaires. It is time, and in fact, time long overdue, for the American people to stand up and fight for their right to freedom, human dignity, and security. And that is the core of what my politics and what this campaign is all about. In 1944, FDR proposed an economic Bill of Rights but he died a year later and was never able to fulfill that vision. Our job, 75 years later, is to complete what Roosevelt started. And that is why today I am proposing a 21st century economic Bill of Rights.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 63 degrees Fahrenheit, slated for a high of 95. We were a bit warm yesterday, and then a cloud cover came over from the coast, which cooled things down a bit. Winds in a couple of hours will be out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, currently out of the due south. Light and variable sunny conditions will prevail most of the day, mostly clear tonight with an overnight low in the upper 50s, low 60s. Winds remaining out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour then, and will be down to 88 tomorrow with sunny conditions as well. Slight chances of thunderstorms in the area. As long as it brings rain and puts out any fires they might start, of course, we'll be fine. Grass pollen is rated at very high. The air quality index is good at 18 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is very high at 9. Do take care. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.74 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is down to 40%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 59 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 67 with heavy rain and a weather advisory for flooding and thunderstorm activity that could also knock out the electrical grid. And I think they need pumps in certain areas of Gay Perry. Rome is 90 degrees and sunny. Wow. Give me a gelato, please. Kiev is 84 and fair. Kabul is 75 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 77 degrees with rain. Tokyo is 72 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 56 and clear. San Francisco, California is 59 degrees and cloudy, but they are under a heat advisory. Take care. And New York is 57 degrees Fahrenheit with rain. And you have a flood advisory, so do take care there as well in the Big Apple. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Josh Israel of Think Progress brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Trump is considering moving 2,000 American troops from Germany to Poland. He explained that his reasoning for doing so was because he simply liked Polish President Andrzej Duda and his hot Aryan wife. Well, the hot Aryan wife is in this reporter's opinion, but you know that's what Donnie likes about her. Oh, my God. Trump made the comments yesterday, Wednesday, during a joint Rose Garden press conference with Duda, who has pushed to dismantle his country's independent judiciary, promoted Holocaust denial, and launched an assault on the free press. Wow. They're like brothers in arms, aren't they? The press conference came one day after U.S. military officials said they were planning to send 1,000 additional troops and a squadron of Reaper drones. Reaper? You mean as in Grim Reaper? Well, that's a nice way to extend American influence and power now, isn't it? Through your proxy, Poland. When a Polish reporter asked the American president why he believed the alliance between the two countries was so important, Trump said, "I just like Poland. And you know the reason why is because it's pretty damn white. As far as he and anybody knows."
Je te donne seulement l'amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
This final amuse-bouche comes out of Think Progress by the great Lindsay Gibbs. Look, the U.S. women's national team is not here to make nice. They're not here to make you comfortable. They're here to make a statement. And one of those is that, look, they're great. They can't help but score, and it is not unsportsmanlike to do so. To not score would have been unsportsmanlike, in this reporter's opinion. And historically, in that large margin of victory in the final game of the first round of group play, the game got increasingly difficult to watch. Well, the team's exuberance, each and every time the ball crossed the goal line, it was possible not to feel for the Thai players who were overmatched in every way. But maybe quality of play could be increased across the board, and the women's national team from the U.S. is doing so. And when men run up the score, it's called, the killer instinct, and it's good. Women run up the score, it's unsportsmanlike. Look, the time for baking cookies at halftime is over. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. That's right, the French 77s will be available and ready for your imbibing pleasure. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver.